Okay, I think we can start now. Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our webinar, Establishing a Company in North Macedonia. My name is Anna Salihi. I am the Austrian Commercial Attaché in Belgrade, but our office is also responsible for Montenegro as well as for North Macedonia. I'd like to introduce to you also my colleagues at the Austrian Commercial Office in Skopje, Mr. Deutschin Smilewski, who is the head of office, and Ms. Biljana Edelinska. I
Good
am
morning and hello everyone.
Good morning, thank you.
I am delighted to guide you through today's session. Before we start, I'd like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded and a video as well as a presentation of our guest speakers will be available to you afterwards. I kindly ask you to turn off your microphone and camera during the presentation, but if you have questions along the presentation, feel free to put them into the group chat. After the presentation, we'll have enough time for a Q&A session where you will be able to turn on your camera and the microphone and also ask your questions directly. Before we dive in, I'd like to give you also some information about North Macedonia. North Macedonia is a small country with 1.8 million inhabitants, but nevertheless is an attractive location for Austrian companies and actually also a good partner for Austria with stable and cooperative economic relations. Why? First of all, it has a strategic location in Southeast Europe with parts of the key transit corridors passing through the country, like the Pan-European Corridor number 8 and 10. Its reputation as a nearshoring destination for manufacturing and services is also growing, partly also due to the competitive labor costs compared to the EU markets. And speaking of the EU, North Macedonia is a EU candidate country with ongoing regulatory alignments, although no chapters have been opened yet. Austria is the largest foreign investor in North Macedonia with around 1.3 billion euros, and there are about 52 Austrian companies operating in North Macedonia. Austrian companies are mostly known for investing in sustainability, creating jobs, and for bringing knowledge into the country. Austria is present in several key economic sectors such as energy, construction, and infrastructure, but also in financial services, environmental and municipal services, retail, logistics, as well as concession-based services. More insights in how to establish a company in North Macedonia will be provided by our guest speakers today from the law firm DDK, attorneys at law. DDK stands for the founders of the law firm, Mr. Debarliev, Mr. Dameski, and Ms. Kelesoska. Who are associates and legal practitioners, and they really try through dedicated efforts and work to pursue the concept of creating specialized and quality legal services as per the client's needs. Covering all fields of work with the contemporary legal practice demands, the law firm was created with the idea and the goal to be the leading firm on the market by delivering the highest standards of services to the clients. So I have the pleasure now to introduce to you first Dragan Dameski, who is one of the founders and the head of the foreign investments department in DDK. He works mostly for foreign clients and has been involved as legal counsel in practically all important projects in North Macedonia, especially in energy, capital markets, and real estate. His areas of expertise include M&A, foreign investments, real estate, energy, securities, and finance. And I have also the pleasure to introduce you to his colleague, Ms. Eleonora Miszewska, who is a senior associate and a member of the corporate team at DDK. Her professional experience is primarily centered on providing legal support and research, as well as advising and representing clients in the field of corporate law. She has extensive experience in the field of establishment of companies and corporate governance, and practical experience with the authorized state bodies regulating the legal acting of the companies. Mr. Dameski, Ms. Miszewska, thank you for being here today with us, and please proceed with your presentation on today's topic, establishing a company in North Macedonia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna, for the lovely introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on today's webinar. So we can get right into it. The establishment or the process of establishment of company in North Macedonia is described and provided under the law on trade companies, which is basically the legal base that defines the requirements as well as the conditions for a legal and successful establishment and registration of a company in the authorized state bodies in North Macedonia. This law regulates also the key components for the registration, operation, and existence of a company, and everything that the future shareholders and managers must undertake, or every action they undertake for the establishment of a company must be in accordance with this law. For a company to be considered as officially registered and existing under this law, it must be registered in the Central Register of Republic of North Macedonia, which is the official state body that keeps all of the databases and all of the registers for every company in North Macedonia, active as well as closed and deleted companies. It is very important to state that this register has a public character, meaning that all of the information and documents that are submitted there and registered in this register have character of publicly available information which can be obtained by any third party upon a request without any authorization or power of attorney from the company itself. The law on trade companies defines quite a lot types of companies or types of organizations, as you can see from the screen. The first one is sole proprietor. This is not actually a company, this is natural person, and we're just going to give a brief definition regarding this because it is maybe not very applicable for your case. Just to have it from an informational aspect. This is basically a natural person who registers in the central register for the purpose of performing a business activity and acquiring profit of the same business activity. Not very applicable for you because this natural person must have a residence, a permanent residence in the country. The first official type of company would be the next one, which is the public trade company or public company. This is a company which is established by two or more shareholders, and they all invest in the company. It can be a different amount of contribution, and it is very specific for this type of company because the shareholders are all liable together jointly and severally without any limitations for the obligations of the company towards its creditors with all of their property, not only the property of the company, but all of their property, and there is no exclusion of such liability. The next form is limited partnership. Limited partnership is an interesting concept due to the different shareholding structure, meaning the limited partnerships has two types of shareholders. The first type are called general shareholders or general partners, and the company must have at least one of these general shareholders. They are also liable with all of their property for the company's obligations. And the second type of shareholder in this company is the limited partner or limited shareholder, which will mean that this type of shareholder is not liable for the company's obligations with all of its property, but up to the amount that he has invested in the company as a shareholder or as a partner. Interesting fact about this partnership is that the general partners can manage or have the right to manage the company and be appointed as manager, and the limited partners do not have this type of right. The following type of company is the limited liability company, shortly LLC, which we can freely say that this is the most common established type of company in North Macedonia. So almost every type of every company that is established is in this form. The name itself says that it's with limited liability, so the shareholders are liable for the company's obligations only in the amount that they have invested in the company or the share capital of the company, with nothing else. It can be established by a few persons. It can be established only by one person. The share capital cannot be lower than 5,000 euro in this type of company. And the individual contribution of each shareholder, cannot be lower than 100 euro. The next one, the simplified limited liability company, is the newest type of company that was introduced in the law on trade companies just a year or two ago. It is basically similar to the limited liability company, but here the share capital can be lowest to 1 euro, only 1 euro, and the individual contribution can be lowest to 10 cents per shareholder. The interesting fact about this company is that can be established by 3 persons the most, so no more than 3 shareholders, and they all have to be natural persons. The next one is the joint stock company. The joint stock company is a company which share capital is divided into shares. So the previous types I have explained, they have one general share capital, which is basically one total amount, and each shareholder has some kind of distribution and gets some kind of percentage of the share in relation to that contribution. But the joint stock company has a share capital that is divided in shares. So the share capital is represented in some amount, and that amount is divided in shares. 1 share, 2 share, 100 shares, and so on and so on. It can be established by one person, one shareholder, or it can be established by multiple shareholders. The next one is limited partnership with shares. This is basically a combination of the limited partnership and the joint stock company. So the share capital is divided into shares, and there must be at least one general shareholder that will be liable for the company's obligations with his property. The next two, or the last two types of companies are a representation office and branch office that are established by a foreign entity. Both of them are established for the both of them. It's interesting that the sole shareholder, the foreign entity that has established this type of companies or organizations, is liable for their activity and for the activities that they will undertake in the business here in North Macedonia. The representation office is established more for research purposes, and then the branch office is established for doing business activity here in North Macedonia. So the foreign entity can perform its business activity here in North Macedonia. The next slide shows the top 3 important things we need to know before initiating the procedure for establishment of a company. So these are, we believe, three most important things to understand. The first one is the Acts for Establishment, or the Articles of Association, however you want to call them. This is basically the base document for the establishment of a company, which is, it kind of represents a contract between the shareholders of the company. If it's one shareholder, it's in the form of a statement. It is defined in the law on trade companies, and it must include some mandatory provisions that the law requires. So this contract or this act includes provisions for the business name of the company, for the registered seat of the company, the shareholders, the management bodies, the supervisory bodies, the share capital, the decision-making process of the shareholders, profit distribution, covering of losses, and so on and so forth. The shareholders can also add additional provisions if they do think that that is necessary and that is in their interest, besides the mandatory provisions that are provided in the law on trade companies. The second most important thing is to understand the company bodies that one company should have. So the first company body is the shareholders' assembly. The shareholders' assembly is basically the shareholders on which they decide for some questions regarding the company's future, business, corporate changes. The obligation that is from the law on trade companies is for the shareholders' assembly to meet at least once a year. But of course, the shareholders can organize shareholder assembly or shareholder meeting if they think that it is necessary for the making of the decision for some important questions for the company. The shareholders' assembly or the shareholders' meeting is managed by the manager, is organized and managed by the manager of the company, but the manager of the company does not have right to vote on this shareholders assembly. The right to vote have only the shareholders. The second company body is the management body. This is basically the legal representative of the company, which manages and represents the company before third parties, before state bodies, in the everyday operating of the newly established company or existing company. It can be one manager, it can be a few individuals, or it can be organized as a management board. And then the last one is the supervisory body or the supervisory board. Also, it can be organized as one person. In this case, it is called controller. And then if there are more persons, they are organized as a supervisory body or supervisory board. When the management body and supervisory body are organized as boards, they have chairman to lead their meetings. The last one is share capital, share contribution. As it is known, the companies must have share capital and each shareholder must provide its share contribution. The minimal amount for most of the types of companies is 5,000 euro. The bigger amounts, 25,000 euro and 50,000 euro, is for the joint stock company, and the difference depends on the way the joint stock company is organized. So if the company is established without issuing a call for acquiring shares, so the shareholders are known that will invest in the joint company, then it's euro 25,000. And then if the company is established with publishing a call for acquiring of shares, then the share capital should not be lower than 50,000 euro. The procedure itself for establishment of companies, pretty much an administrative procedure when you have already chosen the management team, the supervisory board, the shareholders who have drafted and signed the act for establishment. So the procedure starts with applying an application for establishment of a company, who can be the application can be submitted only by a registration agent. So there are usually the lawyers in North Macedonia have such authorization as registration agents. Together with the application, a whole set of documents is submitted, including the act of establishment, some commercial extracts and ID passport documents for identification of the management team, the supervisory team, the shareholders, etc. The step 2 is complete duly signed and certified documentation. This is very important to be mentioned because we are talking about foreign investors establishing a company in North Macedonia. So when a foreign investor, a foreign entity is trying to establish a company in North Macedonia, then a lot of documentation is required in the sense of commercial extracts, some certificates that show the existence of the entity that wants to open up or start a procedure for establishment of company. And all of this documentation must not be older than 3 months on the day of submission of the application. So all of these are like administrative rules that must be respected, so the procedure can be completed successfully. If everything is in order and the application is approved by the central registry, then the company will receive a certificate for establishment of company and will be officially recognized as registered in the register of trade companies. This means that this certificate can be used so the company can start operating and performing an activity in North Macedonia. When the company is established by a foreign investor, it is considered that the foreign shareholder has contributed in the share capital of the company or made an investment in North Macedonia. And it is important for this to be registered in the register of foreign direct investments. The registration is also administrative. You file an application for registration, and they issue a certificate for such a registration. The obligation must be fulfilled in period of 60 days, so 2 months from the investment or from the company, the establishment of the company. And this is very important for the distribution of profit, because usually the banks, when they have to transfer money from North Macedonia to a foreign company, for example, on the base of distribution of profit, they always ask for such certificate for registered direct or foreign investment. This next slide is for tax and incentive system, so I will kindly ask my colleague Dragan to overtake.
Thank you, Eleonora, and thank you for the introduction about the registration in the direct foreign investment register for foreign investment in Macedonia, because this is very important item in order to come to taxes and distribution of dividends and etc. So once you have established what Nora so far explained to you, once you have established a company, then from the legal point of view, you are operational in the legal market, but in order to be completed to do business, you will need to follow one financial tax application. Usually this goes to incorporation of the company into the public office revenue, related to be registered as a taxpayer, meaning that you will be certified with a resolution from the public revenue office that you are registered and you will be in the register for taxpayers in Macedonia and be liable for taxes coming out of your activities and business in Macedonia. There are a few types of taxes which are applicable to the companies. They are corporate income tax, value-added tax, and there is a yearly utility tax. Yearly utility tax in general, it's on a yearly basis taxes for having a company and doing business in the country, in North Macedonia. The fee is something like it's just let's say not that high, it's just around 100 euro per year, and this is obligatory for holder of any type of the company. Doing business in Macedonia means generating income, generating also costs. So the difference between the costs and income will end by the profit at the end, where comes the corporate income tax, which is, let's say, profit tax, simply said. This tax, it's applicable on yearly basis also, but depending on the volume of the taxes that you are going to pay, then you might become a taxpayer on a upfront basis, which are paid on a monthly installments, and then on the yearly basis it's just balanced. The corporate income tax, it's in rate of 10%. It's a fixed rate, and it's paid to incomes, difference between income and costs on a total amount before deducting any taxes. So in general, you are paying 10% of the difference between your income and your costs on the yearly basis. This tax is one of the most competitive tax in Macedonia, as Anna has presented on the very beginning. 10% corporate tax, fixed tax, it's very, let's say, investor friendly. And this is the reason why we have seen in the past years a lot of investments or choosing North Macedonia as a hub for investing, especially in Europe, having in mind that North Macedonia have signed the accession agreement with stabilization and pre-accession agreement with European Union, where there is no custom duties, there is no additional taxes to be paid. So it's a very nice near shore, as Anna presented, location within Europe, where you can gain benefits of lower costs of labor force, as well as lower taxes rates, and deliver the products free of custom and additional burdens to European market. Value-added tax, it's a tax for applying the services and products that you are going to produce and put on market. It's 18% rate, which is also fixed rate. The VAT that it's connected to the basic business and activity of the company, it's deductible, meaning that you need to invoice your final clients with the VAT. Once you received the payment, you are obliged to pay this back to the public revenue office. Even this goes also, can be the obligation for payment of VAT can be gradually on annual, half annual, quarterly, or monthly basis, depending once again on the volume of the income that you are generating. I think that the threshold, it's 2 million for registration of VAT, and then up to 6 million, which is I think 100,000 euro roughly. Then you become half yearly, quarterly, or monthly payer of VAT. If you pay VAT because your, let's say, obligation will be up to date for 1 month, half a year, or a year, but your client didn't pay the invoice to you in that period, you must pay the VAT to the public office revenue, and you will be then once you received, you will be payment from the client, you will be able to deduct this or balance this this sheet with VAT. So this is about the taxes that are implemented for doing business in Macedonia. When it comes to workforce and paying your headcounts in the company, then comes personal income tax and social and health contributions. Personal income tax, it's also fixed rate 10%, which is also very competitive in the region and on the market. And it's paid on any payment towards your employees, natural persons. And it's also paid on a gross amount, meaning that from the gross amount you need to deduct 10% or vice versa. I think it's 11%, something roughly around 11%, in order to pay in parallel while you are paying the salary. So in parallel, you are paying the salary, net salary to the employee, and the taxes to the public office revenue. Personal income tax is also applicable when it comes to distribution of dividends, of profits, if the profits and dividends end to the natural person. So if the dividend is going to be paid to a legal entity, then no dividend, no personal income tax is applicable. But if the dividend is to be paid to the natural person, then once again, personal income tax need to be deducted from the gross amount and paid to the public office revenue, and only the net amount of the dividend will be distributed directly to the shareholder. So one of the interesting points and issues about VAT, it's mandatory versus voluntary VAT registration, because as I said, there is a threshold which is 2 million dinars. It's roughly around 35,000 euro annual income. So if your threshold is up to this amount, you have a possibility not to be registered for VAT. So meaning that you will not express VAT while you are putting your products and services on the market. So it will be VAT free. But here, the services and products that you buy for your needs, or you use for your needs, if they are with VAT, then you are supposed to pay this VAT and to apply for reimbursement of the VAT towards the Public Revenue Office, which is an administrative process, difficult process. You're dealing with Public Revenue Office. It takes a lot of time, and this is something that a lot of companies, what we have seen, want to escape, because this process, as I said, take a while, and always Public Office Revenue is looking for some more additional documents and issues, not to pay these taxes, but rather to escape paying. So that's why what we see is that most of the companies register for VAT. Once you reach this threshold of 35,000 euro, by law, you become a VAT taxpayer, meaning that you will need to inform the Public Office Revenue that you have reached this threshold, and then the Public Office Revenue will issue decision for VAT registration. And starting from then, you are once again a VAT taxpayer. What is interesting is that registering for VAT, it's not possible anytime that you wish, but there is sequences where you can voluntarily register yourself for VAT. First possibility to register for VAT is when you have established the company in a period in a period of 15 days after the establishment. You have right to apply for registration for VAT, no matter of the threshold, no matter of any other, let's say, conditions, but this is voluntary, it's your will, and you want to be part of this VAT system in the country, and you apply and you get registered. And then you get into the track for the VAT processes on a regular basis. Another moment of registration for VAT is once you reach this threshold. If you decided at the moment of establishment not to be registered for VAT, then once you reach the threshold of 35,000 euro of income, you become by law, and then once again you apply to the Public Revenue Office, and then you get registered for VAT. This is any time in the year. And the third possibility, these are all possibilities that you have to establish to be registered as a VAT taxpayer, is by the end of fiscal annual year, because in Macedonia a fiscal year is an annual year starting 1st of January and 31st of December. So after the end of this fiscal year, in the first 15 days of the month of January in the next year, you have also free slot to voluntary register for VAT. So these are three possibilities for registering in VAT and entering into the process of the VAT taxpayer. Can we go on the next slide, Nora? So coming to profit dividend distribution, this is, I think, the most interesting question for you and for all foreign investors in Macedonia. As we said, in general, North Macedonia, it's open, and the trade company law do not make differences between residents and non-residents, meaning that the distribution of dividend is free and it's voluntary to the shareholders of the company. This is very important because the transfer of dividends can go even cross-border without any problems, except what we mentioned. It was mentioned from Eleonora that you need to register your investment into the foreign direct investment register in Macedonia, because this is a precondition in order to be able to send the dividends out of Macedonia, to have cross-border distribution of dividends. Once you have registered for in this register for direct foreign investments and you made a profit at the end of the annual year, fiscal year, you need to carry out as a shareholder a decision for distribution of dividends. The dividend is paid, as I said, if the shareholder is a legal entity. There is no additional, the dividends is distributed after paying of corporate income tax, profit tax, 10%. And after paying of this tax, you are free to distribute the dividend to your shareholders. If the shareholder is a legal entity, there are no additional taxes paid. If the shareholder is a natural person, then additional 10% of personal income tax need to be deducted from the gross amount, and then only the net amount will be distributed to the shareholders locally here, to the residents, or cross-border to the non-residents. Legally provided restrictions are the ones that we mentioned: the registration in a direct foreign investment register, which is only a precondition and it's formal administrative procedure. Time frame for distribution, I think it's by the end of the fiscal year, but what we have seen is that this is not a strict period. You can also not reinvest the profit for this year in the next year, but you can just prolong or leave the dividend not distributed in the next period, which you can do it in any further time in the future. So more or less, this is about the profit and dividend distribution. Nora, I give the floor back to you.
Okay, so we will talk about other important obligations under the law after the company is duly registered in the central register. These are some of the notifications that must be submitted. They're mandatory to be submitted towards the State Market Inspectorate and the State Labor Inspectorate. These are the two largest inspectorates in North Macedonia that do the most commonly inspections in the companies. So notification for fulfillment of minimal technical conditions, it is called the notification that must be submitted towards the State Market Inspectorate, and this pertains the companies that are in the sales trading industry, the hospitality industry, and the tourism industry, and also each company that has in ownership or under lease some kind of warehouse where it keeps its own goods connected with the business activity. The second notification is called notification for start of business activity, which is submitted towards the State Labor Inspectorate. Also, the State Labor Inspectorate must be notified if the employees in the company are to work on holidays, are to work on Sunday, etc. Both of these notifications must be submitted 15 days before the start of the performing of the business activity, of the actual work, and the submitted proof of this notification should be kept in the registered headquarters of the company and be available to present before the inspectorates whenever they come into inspections. Other state bodies must be notified if the case is like that. For example, there are companies that are in the industries where a prior permit or license or consent from a state body must be obtained for the company to be established or for the company to start doing a business activity. So for each change, for the establishment, for the closure of the company, in some cases, you must notify other state bodies. These are ministries, agencies, commissions, etc., depending on the case. And fourth, one more important obligation that the company must complete right after or 15 days after it is officially registered in the central registry is to make a registration of an ultimate beneficial owner. I believe this is it is a very important obligation and is familiar with all of you. So the UBO is basically one natural person that is considered to be the direct or indirect owner of the company, or some other person that in some other way exercises control over the company. So this is mandatory. It is done in the period of 15 days after the registration, free of charge. After the period of 15 days, you can also go ahead and register UBO, but it is subject to a tax fee paid to the central register, which can go up to 2,000, 2,500 euro, depending on the company and the type of company. The next and last topic that we are going to cover is the labor and residence regulations. So whenever we talk about employment here in Macedonia, we have these two relevant laws: law on labor relations, which pertains the employment of residents of North Macedonia, and law on employment of foreigners, which allows and regulates the employment of foreign citizens here in North Macedonia. The employment of residents is done before the Agency for Employment of Republic of North Macedonia based on an employment contract, and it is a very simple procedure. The employment of foreigners is done before the Agency for Employment of Republic of North Macedonia and the Ministry of Internal Affairs. This is an administrative procedure that must be completed before the worker starts working here. At the end of the procedure, when it's successfully completed, the foreigner gets a permit for work. The last point is management employment. Is this mandatory? Because we get asked a lot. This question is very common. The manager of the company can be resident or no resident, and its employment is not mandatory. So it can be employed as managers, or it cannot. It mustn't. It is not mandatory for him or her to be employed as manager in the company. It can be on the basis of a contract or just on the basis of a decision for appointment of manager adopted by the shareholders meeting. So I believe these are all of the topics and points we have covered for today's webinar. We are available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miszewska, and also Mr. Dameski. We have received a question in advance, and that would be, you also mentioned the manager, and can a legal entity be appointed as a manager of a company?
So no, the law on trade companies only allows for a natural person to be appointed as manager of a company. As I said, it can be a citizen of North Macedonia, it can be a foreign citizen, but it should only be a natural person. Legal entity is not allowed.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions in the meantime from the audience? If not, I have a next question. So is share capital contribution required for establishing the branch office or a representation office?
Okay, thank you for the question. Regarding the branch and rep office, they do not have share capital. It is not required because, as I mentioned earlier, for the obligations of this type of organizations, the liable is the foreign shareholder that has established such office in the country.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I have a question to you for your colleague about taxation. What is the procedure for avoiding double taxation?
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Anne. In general, there is a bilateral agreement for double taxation avoiding between Austria and North Macedonia. This agreement was enacted back in, I think, 2008. And this agreement allows the residents between these two countries to be balanced between the taxes that they are paying in either of the countries. Meaning that if you establish a company in Macedonia, this is what we discussed today, and you generate profits, the corporate income tax, profit tax that you're supposed to pay in Macedonia, which is, as we said, in a rate of 10%, would be recognized based on this bilateral agreement, would be recognized by Austrian authorities as a tax paid. And if the tax, corporate income tax, profit tax in Austria is higher than this rate, you will be supposed to pay only the difference between these two rates. For example, if profit tax in Austria is 15%, in Macedonia it's 10%, and you pay it in Macedonia 10%, only the difference, 5%, you are supposed to pay in Austria. This goes related to profit tax, as I said, but also apply to personal income tax, meaning that also for the distribution of dividends, what we mentioned previously, if you distribute the dividend to a natural person, personal income tax would be applicable, and based on that, you are supposed to pay once again here, withhold and pay the tax here in Macedonia. But this tax will be recognized by Austrian authorities on the same basis as I explained, related to profit tax too. So this is how this bilateral agreement works. In general, in order to be able to proceed with this, because this is what the bilateral agreement prescribes, but in order to put this into real life through steps, through the procedure, you need to obtain here in Macedonia, the company needs to obtain from Public Revenue Office a deed, residential deed, that the company is duly established and existing in Macedonia, and that it's active in Macedonia. And based on this deed, together with the evidence for payment of the taxes, probably this is the annual reports, you submit those in front of your authorities in Austria in order to apply for activation of this bilateral agreement and balancing the taxes between these two countries. Thank you.
Thank you for this very elaborate answer. Are there any other questions? Now is your chance to ask directly our experts in North Macedonia. If not, I thank you for your time. We will send you the presentation afterwards, where you will also have the contact details of our two experts. So if you have a question afterwards, in hindsight, you are more than free to contact them. We also provide you services through our commercial office in Skopje with my two colleagues I introduced to you before. And well, yeah, if there are no further questions, I wish you a nice remaining day and all the best and greetings from Belgrade.